I was in the Apple store buying my new editing station to edit videos. And there was a little 18-month-old boy.
A little younger.
Was he? How old was he then? He was 18
Almost
months.
17 months.
Almost 17 months.
Yeah.
Little 17-month-old boy named Walker, I didn't know, but walking around in the store, who was wobbly, had distended belly, irregular hair growth, really dark red cheeks, really thick puffy eyes, and was struggling to communicate with his dad. And I could just tell. And once you start getting into this, we've all been through this. You're in a store and you go, the universe is begging me to talk to this person, But a lot of times you just can't. It's really hard. And especially a man talking to a man about their kid in some, store. It's kind of wacky, But I really felt like I had to just give it a try, because it just, every time I looked over, I saw something and I just went, all right, I'll just do it. And I walked over and I said, does your son drink a lot of milk? And he says, yeah, he does. Why did you ask? And I said, well, I'm not a doctor, but I'm seeing some behaviors in your son that my son had gone through too, and milk was one of the things, believe it or not, that was kind of causing that going on. And I mentioned a couple of things that I saw, just trying to rattle off some of the symptoms that I saw. And he's just like, oh, yeah. And he kind of walks away, which I expected. And he jumps on the phone, and I'm thinking, all right, is he calling? Do I need to make a quick exit? And anyway, he flipped down the phone afterwards, and then he walked over and he said, we'd like to come and talk to you, and he called Laura, and I'll just introduce.
Well, I had been on. I was on the phone.
You can come out of the light.
I had actually been on the phone with a client, and my phone clicks through, and it's my husband saying, "I just met this man, and he said Walker has fungus." And so bizarre, and I thought, who is this person? So I said, let's talk about this when you get home. So he comes back and he starts mentioning this conversation that he had with Stan, and I'm thinking, I've heard this name before, I know this name. And I remember that about 6 months before, I had been driving across town listening to NPR, and I had heard Stan on the radio talking about how he recovered his son from autism. Never thinking that any of this had to do with me, but I thought, I have a friend whose son's got autism, and I should listen to this so I can give her this information. So lo and behold, my daughter puts a puzzle piece in our laptop 6 months later and breaks my laptop in the middle of a project. So my husband runs in, and this is where this phone call comes in. And leading up to this, Walker had, by the time he started on formula, which was early, I had had trouble nursing him, the nightmare really began. I have a daughter who's 5 years old, and she did not have really many issues with food. But with Walker, or that we knew of until later, but with Walker, he started having all of this trouble once we started introducing any kind of formula food, and we went back and forth with pediatricians on, we'll try soy formula, and first, I don't like the idea of using soy formula, try all these other things first. And then when those didn't work, she said, well, just put him on soy formula. And I thought, well, you just told me that wasn't so great, but we tried it. We had him on every kind of milk you can imagine, and for 16 months, he did not sleep more than 4 nights through the night. So every single night, he was up from 1 in the morning until 5 in the morning, twisting and in pain. And we just couldn't figure out what it was. I mean, we went to gastroenterologists who told me to take him off brown rice and take him off whole grains and put him on a white rice diet and white flour diet. And I thought, who goes on a white flour diet? But, okay, so there I am buying Sara Lee bagels, thinking that's what I'm going to feed my kid. And we went to an allergist who barely tested him for anything, but then gave me a big bag of prescription drugs for me to, start him on. So we walked out the door, and I threw him in the trash because I just knew that this wasn't right. So my husband called and said, this guy wants you to give him a call. So the next morning, I called Stan, and he spent an hour and a half on the phone with me. We never met, but it was an hour and a half on the phone. And he said to me, "Get a big piece of paper because I'm going to tell you how you need to feed your son." And I thought, okay, and I still have this really big piece of paper. But I wrote all these notes, and I was just dying inside because I thought I was raised by an Italian mother and an Irish father. So here, 6 nights a week we had pasta. It was potatoes and bread, and this was our diet. And I thought to myself, I thought I was feeding my son really healthy food, albeit it's organic, but it was organic macaroni and cheese and organic, So I was kind of in a panic because I thought, one, I'm going to be starving him to death because how do I start just getting rid of milk? And I understand said to me, why do you feel like you need to feed your child with milk? And I said, well, because he's a baby, and I was so defensive about it. And I remember we spent a lot of the conversation with me saying, well, what about this? Can he eat this? And you're saying, no. Well, this doesn't have this in it. And I remember Stan saying to me, I I don't care what it doesn't have in it. What has it got in it? What are you eating? You know, that's what you have to worry about. What's in the ingredients, you know? So I got off the phone and I looked at my husband and I said, well, you know, what have we got to lose? I mean, it's 16 months and my son is suffering. And I've been trying to convey this to doctors who, you know, I don't think they really hear you when you say every night my son is up. But for 16 months, night after night, week after week, month after month, my child was suffering all night. I mean, not to mention what it was doing to all of us. So I thought, okay, we'll try it. We ran out to Costco and bought the juicer, and we started the diet and started this caveman diet. And that it was on Friday. And Friday night, we slept through the night. And we woke up the next day and thought, oh gosh, okay, well, let's try, keep going, you know. So we did it that next day, and he slept through the night. And I had noticed that I hadn't made the connection, but right after his MMR vaccine, which we did a little bit on the late side, like right around 16 months, words that he could say at 15 months, like doggy and mommy and daddy, were things like duh, and, you know, it's like hard, and muff. And whenever I told him, I'd say, Walker, doggy, you know, and he couldn't get that second syllable out. And nothing ever made a connection to me with what he was eating, but my husband and I just thought, oh, that's strange. It's like things that he could say, he's not saying now. And on that Sunday, 2 days after the diet, we were sitting at the breakfast table, and Walker looked at us and he said, Walker loves doggies. And I looked at my husband and he looked at me and I thought, well, something can't be right. This has been 48 hours, you know, this can't be right. And I called Stan and I said, Stan, it's been 48 hours. And he said, yeah, well, we see the results, you know, really quickly. And I thought, okay, so as hard as this was, because believe me, I'm not, you know, I don't know if I'm preaching to the choir here because I don't know how many of you are actually already doing this diet or, you know, or consider it over, but as hard as it was, you know, it was nothing compared to seeing your child, you know, in this other way. And so, you know, we just stuck with it. And then we went in to go meet with Stan. It was just a few days later. And I was at this point where, you know, of course, after 16 months not sleeping, but I just could say to my husband, you know, I had just turned 40, and I said to my husband, I'm 40 and I feel like I'm 70. I said, I don't feel like I'm 50 or I'm 60, I feel like I'm 70. Like there's something wrong. We went to go see Stan, and sure enough, he's talking to me about this toxicity. And I, out of solidarity with Walker, thought, well, I'm going to do this diet with him because I can't have him be the only person in the house who can't eat this way. So out of solidarity, I started this diet with him. And Stan introduced me to the B12 spray, which, you know, was like, oh, I could be addicted to this. I mean, it was like a real big change after that. And I started to feel so much better. And a month later, I guess, or in January, end of January, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was like, how could this be happening, you know? But I tell you, the more research that I did, and the more that I looked into things, I thought, of course, this makes so much sense, you know? I've been eating the same way, and I started looking into the idea of these fungal issues and viruses, and, you know, I don't know, I'm not here, I'm not a doctor to, you know, talk about cancer, but I did start talking to a lot of people, and it seemed like the same diet that I had started was the diet that I needed to start helping myself. And we've been now on it over a year, so about 14 months, and I went through this past year, last March I had surgery, and I went through chemotherapy and radiation. And people would ask, and I went through it all very well actually, but people would say to me, by the end of it, they said, you know, how do you feel? And I said, to be honest with you, I feel better now after a year of a diagnosis of cancer, chemotherapy, and radiation. I have more energy now than I did a year ago. And I attribute so much of that to the diet, this change that we made. But Walker is doing great. I mean, he's just doing great. He's unbelievable. And so we say that Walker, you know, that Ruby changed our life. That Ruby saved Walker because she put her Sleeping Beauty puzzle piece in our life. But Stan certainly had a lot to do with it. And I must say, anytime, you know, we were worried about it, I would say to my husband, you know, here's this man, he hasn't asked us for a dime. He's not trying to sell us anything. All he's telling us to do is to change this diet, you know? So we might as well try it, you know? And that's what we did. And it's, you know, the is all, I can't even stress enough, you know, how much it's changed all of us, you know, it really changed our lives. And I can't imagine us now even, you know, going back. And one of the things that I think people focus on so much when they hear about this is oh, that's so tough, you know, so your child can't eat this and can't eat this, and they focus on all of the things that your child can't eat. And I think, my child, you know, he eats broccoli like it's an ice cream cone, you know, he gets excited in the morning when we juice kale and spinach and apples, and, you know, we just did it this morning. And I think, that's so much better. So all we do is like, we focus on, you know, all the things that we do eat, which is like all this great stuff. And, I don't know, what else can I say?